thank you everyone for tuning into the first episode of the Weekend Podcast. The show for those of you who are also on Weekend Gunnit's Reddit, but then got thrown off by a bunch of assholes who don't understand what the point of Reddit was in the first place. So, I'm joined here today by Narc, Barroom, and Benjamin, blog writer, TFB TV, longtime author. So, give a shout.
Hello.
All right, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. And then I am AFT Dog Shoot Company, Barroom, longtime printing enthusiast and first-time house burning downer. And then Narc, infamous truck stop hooker murderer. All right, so we're going to do the quick rundown here. So, Ben, wanted to hear from you first. How long have you been doing anything with TFB TV related? How did you get involved? And then really the serious question is, how big is your love for James Reeves in like a sexual manner?
Sure. So I've been with TFB for about almost 4 years now. Jeez. I started in 2018, and I've just been writing shit ever since. I started out writing shill posts, which is where I found gun deals and posted them, and tried to include affiliate links every once in a while. Moved on to doing actual, like, real gun articles. Now I'm here, and my love for James Reeves has burned brighter every day. One day I will woo him away from his wife. She doesn't deserve him.
What do his thighs feel like on your ears as you're pleasing him with your mouth?
Like the warmest, softest earmuffs you've ever encountered.
Oh, good hell.
See, that's good to know. And I'm thinking, like, when you're wooing James Reeves, right, are you also trying to get after Thunder Ranch and Clint Smith? Like, because I know they're in tight right now. They're homies for life.
Honestly, Clint Smith, great guy. I haven't met him personally, but from everything that I've heard from everybody who has interacted with him, he's just an amazing guy. So I have nothing bad to say about him. Doesn't do anything for me, sexually speaking.
I mean, that's all right. He's getting up there. Yeah, nothing wrong with him. Just it's like a silver lining to a silver dick.
Sure,
so AARP club, man, you got to get in there sometime. But if you want to weigh in, that's the way you do it. Get those nice elderly benefits. So, all right. So first thing I wanted to touch on the show, because Ben, you had some new topics here, or new points of interest. The Russian ammo ban that occurred about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Is set for September 7th is the cutoff date for any new permits. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong here, but those permits take several weeks to get through ATF approval, and it's certainly not like they're actually going to really approve anything else at this point.
Yeah. So the way that the permitting system works, and I got this information by going and I talked to a gentleman with a Type 8 FFL, which is the import FFL, and I talked to an attorney who specializes in firearms and ammo import. So there are a couple of different ATF Form 6s. The two that are relevant are the Form 6 and the Form 6A. Excuse me while I take a drink.
Bless up.
No drinking allowed, ever.
We're sober on this show all the time.
Drinks and
none of you are even sober as you speak.
That's a patent lie. I would never be. Yeah, I am. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not drunk, sadly. I'm just suffering from sleep deprivations.
So there are two ATF Form 6s. There's the Form 6 and the Form 6A. The Form 6 is good for 2 years, and you file it, and you go, hey, ATF, I want to import 20 million rounds of TIL ammo. And the ATF says, fuck you, okay. And then, so obviously you can't bring in 20 million rounds on one shipment. That's just too much ammo. So you'll bring it in as 10 shipments of 2 million rounds. And each of those shipments requires the Form 6A. Now, theoretically, the 6A doesn't actually have to be approved. It just gets filed. It's not requisite on ATF or just Department of State approval. The Form 6 is requisite of approval from the ATF and the State Department. So when they said no new permits, what they meant is no new Form 6s. And unfortunately, since it takes 4 to 6 weeks to process a Form 6, and the ban was announced about 3 weeks before it took effect, there's not going to be any new Form 6s coming out. So while the existing Form 6s are okay, they're very limited in terms of the quantities on them. Now, somebody might have a Form 6 out there to import 100 million rounds over the next 2 years. I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't think that's likely, but, it's entirely possible.
Depends on who's footing, paying a greasy
Sure.
palm with the AFT. I mean, it's somebody's doing it. Somebody's going to be able to get it in, but it's not going to be readily available to the public.
Exactly. And so I've also been able to find actual hard numbers on how much ammo gets imported from Russia on a yearly basis. So
Oh wow!
Russia imports about 750 million. Let's see, what are these units? Rounds of ammo a year. So that's about 750 million rounds of ammo a year gets imported into the United States from Russia. I talked to a gentleman who's the chief economist for the Small Arms Analytics and Forecasting Service. And he said that there's a roughly 20-20 rule of thumb for Russia, which is to say Russia is 20% of ammunition imports, and imports are 20% of all ammo on the market. So Russian ammo is about 40% of ammo in the Russian ammo is about 4% of all ammo on the U.S. market right now. So when you crunch the actual numbers, you get a little closer to 6%, but 4% is a good average historically speaking. So roughly speaking, what has happened is about 4 to 6% of all ammo in the United States is gone now.
Wow. Well, I
So-
mean, speaking from a purely practical standpoint, just from the whether it's I mean, just domestically, what are some alternatives? I mean, what would be the best alternative for somebody who is relying on that to do, whether it goes to reloading or another brand or another manufacturer? I mean, what sort of workarounds are coming for this to do something about it?
Short term, shoot a different caliber.
Yeah.
Long term, so eventually production is going to get spun up in other countries. Imports are going to resume, and there's price of ammo is going to come back down. It's already back down to about 40 cents a round online after it spiked to, I think, a high of about 55 cents a round I'm talking about the low end. Like the cheapest available ammo, if you go on AmmoSeek, went from 27 cents a round to 30 cents a round to 40 to 50, is now back down to about 40 cents a round. I think that's where it's going to stay for a while. Because that's cheap enough that people are willing to pay it for 1,000 rounds, but expensive enough that the companies are still, gouging. They're still gouging. I mean, they got this ammo for fucking cents on the dollar. They were willing to sell it a week ago at 27 cents a round, and now they're selling the same ammo for 40 cents a round. It's not like they paid more to get it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not like the shipping and logistics costs have gone up a single cent. It's purely market driven.
Yeah, it's purely, and to an extent that's fine. It's market driven, whatever. But so the price is going to stay high because it can stay high. Eventually, production is going to get spun up in other countries, but the draw of Russian ammo is that it was cheap. And it was cheap because they were using Soviet-era materials, they were using Soviet-era machines, they were using Soviet-era tooling and dyes and what have you. And these factories were spun up to, satisfy the need of the Red Army, in a theoretical World War situation. So they could churn out ammo like nobody's business. And now we can't get ammo from those factories anymore. So it's going to take time, and it's going to be slow. Going to be very slow. I think that if I was going to put a hard number on it, I'd say we might see 25 cent around 7.6239 again in 3 or 4 years, maybe.
And of course,
Yeah.
that's going to be imported from other countries, likely China.
No, so we already can't get ammo from China.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
quite
the
get
Chinese
that.
ammo import ban was 93, 94.
And you
Something
don't
like
see any sort of, well, yeah, they definitely list that, but
So the way that it gets around it is that you can import ammo from Taiwan, which is technically not China, technically.
yeah,
Yeah, not yet.
don't tell them.
Yeah, that's where Wolf Gold comes from, and that's where we get the Wolf T1 piston uppers. Those are coming out of Taiwan. But it's going to take them a while to spin up production enough to meet that demand, especially because Taiwan is a very small island. They don't have the resource, they don't have the natural resources, so it's not, they have to import the natural resources. They have to find land, which is going to be hard because it's a small island. So I think it's much more likely we're going to see ammo coming out of Eastern Europe. But again, it's going to take time because they're not tooled up for it. Some people were floating to Ukraine. We're not going to get ammo from Ukraine. It's not going to happen. They've
Yeah.
had I think 2 ordnance factories blow up during their little civil war. So all domestic production in the Ukraine goes to the Ukrainian army. We're not getting ammo from the Ukraine. Similarly, I don't think we're getting much ammo from Poland just because I don't think they're spun up for it. I think that if we're being completely honest, it's going to be Serbian, it's going to be Czech, maybe a couple of other Eastern European countries. The fastest ones are going to be the ones who already have factories to shoot or to produce 7.62-39. But most of that production that was built by the Soviets was contained within Russia itself.
Do you think it's safe to say at this point, because I've already started seeing it, the cheapest stuff right now, like 39, 40 cents a round, is the Serbian surplus PPU, which I know they have, at least in some capacity, laying around, even though it's corrosive. Do you think, at least for the short term, because I know I would be fine with shooting corrosive at the, for a cheaper amount, but it's also not the ideal. So do you think in the short term that Serbian and especially their surplus corrosive brass will be like the big item for 7.62?
Short term, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. I know I was seeing M67 ammo go for relatively cheap, which I have some, and I've got Serbian surplus brass cased ammo. I got like a case of the 1,200 and something rounds sitting like 10 feet away from me right now. But corrosive is a pain in the ass, so I don't, and it's limited in quantity, so I don't think that's going to last very long.
Right. And then one other thing as it relates to ammo ban. I've heard the notion tossed around a lot of Belarusian ammo as a next source of cheap imports, and it seems to be by some estimates where Russia would have any kind of puppet operation set up. How likely do you think that is? And then also, by that same metric. Of course, we won't know until September 7th when everything's clarified, but how likely do you think it is that Russia will be exporting, at the very least, materials to former COMBLOC states, maybe even some tooling to set up domestic production for the U.S.?
So I do know that Belarus has a couple of years ago they made a new small arms ammo plant. I don't know what their production looks like. I don't know if they're able to produce enough to meaningfully impact the American market. Because remember, the Russians were importing into the U.S. alone 750 million rounds of ammo a year. That's an obscene amount of ammo. That made them the number one importer of ammunition to the United States. Whether or not any one country or any group of countries can match that quickly is a whole different ballgame. So looking at the list of other people who import ammo, the number 2 is Mexico. which means that we're getting a lot of ammo from Aguila, and they mostly specialize in 22 LR and shotgun shells. And they only produced 600 million rounds of ammo, most of it 22 and shotgun ammo. At 22, it's a lot easier to produce. It's a lot easier to move in bulk. So whether or not we will see Aguila start producing 7.6239, whether or not we will see the Czech Republic start importing 7.6239, I don't know. But I think that we're likely going to see this ammo coming out of the Czech Republic and Serbia and maybe Hungary. But it's going to take a long time. And really, we have been mundo fucked.
Yeah. Well, and just again, from a political standpoint, the Belarusian situation is becoming more and more similar to the Ukrainian situation as things progress. And also, Mexico has always been a workaround for Chinese corporations and Chinese bans on products into the U.S. There is probably no other single country that Chinese corporations have aggressively moved in and taken over huge swaths of industry like Mexico, and just Americans at large are completely oblivious to it.
Oh, absolutely. This is just not something that the majority of people think about. And why would they? I mean, it doesn't affect them.
Yeah, exactly. It's cheap stuff on Amazon that gets here really fast, and they don't really care how it happens. which I can't. I have been just as guilty of as anybody else too. So
absolutely, I bought cheap stuff from Amazon. I love getting those 2-day shipping notices and what have you. But at the end of the day, it's just not something that crosses the mind of the average American. Because again, why would it?
Sure. From a reloading perspective, what's the market like as far as components for people who already reload or are looking to get into it themselves? I mean, has this affected the price of just actual bullets and primers and the like?
So it's a little trickier with stuff like that. I can say that I do know that about 20% of all firearms related imports, such as shells, complete cartridges or parts, so that means powder, primers, casings, what have you,
No.
come from Russia. But that's only 20% of imports. I don't know how much is made in the United States. That information is really hard to find, and I have not yet been able to get it.
Sure. Just something to always consider for people who are super serious about maintaining their own personal stocks. Reloading is always the OG way to go when you can. Not always practical, but always it's just like a good skill to know.
Absolutely. I wish I was more into reloading. I just haven't been able to justify the startup cost yet.
One more thing before we go ahead and switch topics to I guess 3D printed firearms and some developments as of late. There's been a lot of talk. We all know, I think, even though it's going to take quite a while, because of how big, especially in recent years, the 7.6239 market has gotten in the United States. Even 9x18 Makarov and similar, we'll know those will return in some form, even if they're not as cheap as they were, such as 35 cents a round or something similar. But there's a lot of notion that 5.45 might actually go extinct in the United States. How likely do you think that is? Or at the very least, how likely do you think it is that it will never be a practical caliber again?
I don't think that's likely. I think I will grant that it is, of course, possible. But I think that somebody is going to come up with 5.45 ammo, if only just because Palmetto State Armory has been selling AK-74s. I'm sure that Zastava has been looking into importing AK-74s, even if they haven't done so yet. The market for 5.45 is still small, but it's bigger than it was. And if there is a market, somebody will make ammo for it. Will it still be practical? Will it still be cheap? No. Will there still be ammo? Yes.
Right on. All right, so next up, and glad we just got Barroom back. 3D printed firearms and accessories. This is more. There hasn't been anything super noteworthy of late, but I know we each have some personal projects on that front that I think could lead to, hopefully, maybe some more widespread adoption. I'll lead this one off in saying that, especially as of late, I'm seeing a lot more of a notion for the 3D printing of polycarbonate-based plastics. Polycarbonate being, for those who don't know, normal 3D printed plastics are based in PLA and PLA plus, which, although strong, are not exactly indefinite solutions. You can't 3D print a PLA firearm and say this is going to be something that will last an incredibly long time. You might get several hundred to even a couple thousand rounds, but eventually you will lose it to heat deformation. Whereas polycarbonate offers a lot of the same features and abilities, but with a temperature rating that is incredibly high by comparison. And now we're seeing, with Barroom and myself, it is also a lot more practical to print than it once was, with new blends coming out recently, Polymax polycarbonates. So, Barroom, I wanted to ask, since you're new to this heating setup, how's it going so far?
Well, so the reason I was missing for the first half of this so far is I melted the shit out of my shroud, and that fell off in the middle of printing a Mac 10 lower last night. So, this hobby is nothing but frustration, and it's awesome. I do enjoy it, but like it's cool shit, man. Like that's what's been going on for like the past couple months, year. People have been doing more exotic materials, and like so they're figuring out like all sorts of cool shit you could build at home with like a pretty basic printer setup with not too many upgrades. Like guys are doing things where like they're printing with Delrin, which is a like self-lubricating plastic, and they're using that to print like trigger groups and fold trigger packs and like printed springs for these things too, which is really fucking cool. Delrin is self-lubricating plastic, so you can use that as like an FRT trigger and theoretically just have that just run until it, you know, I don't know. I haven't had one fail.
I guess that we'll get to FRT in a second, but yeah, no, this has been as of late. I've seen a lot of notion of it, and also there's been a lot of new content creators specifically about 3D printed accessories. Of course, there's been the time ones such as Ivan, but lately it's a lot from Print Shoot Repeat. Has been popular, especially with now almost $140 build FN pistols. I believe that was the number given for 40 caliber 3D printed pistols that hold up. Ivan's been working now on 308 Heckler and Koch builds that are holding up as well, just out of regular plastic. So I think even with the diminishing, with the polymer 80s and the pre-built permanent frames, or excuse me, hand-built permanent frames going away here soon, even though that puts 3D printing as the next big target for gun control, I think we have a pretty big lead here.
I mean, it's really like you can't stop it because it's, we have torrenting, which means you can spread things with peer-to-peer downloads. If I wanted to or you wanted to, it's pretty easy to set one of those up that is untraceable back to the original person. Like it's once you push people to this point, right? Like, and that's the grand irony of gun control or the war on drugs, even, or anything else, is once you push people into the fringe, you lose your oversight of them, because once you force them to do those things, like it's like, all right, well, you're fucked now, because like you have no oversight over these people anymore, and that's the point that the self-making gun community has gotten pushed into is, and you'll see it with companies who are getting pushed by the ATF, and you see Big Daddy Unlimited is coming out with their own FRT right after Rare Breed got in trouble with the ATF. Like it's people smell blood in the water, so to speak.
And just from a purely legislative standpoint, you're talking about an entirely different industry and items that are much more difficult to attempt to regulate legislatively, because you're talking about something that was not originally intended or manufactured for the purpose of making firearms or firearm components. I mean, literally made and invented to make other things, literally anything made out of plastic. And so to say, you can't, it's like, banning cows because you don't like, cheese. Like it's just going to be much more difficult for them to have any kind of legislative or regulatory process or.
Yeah, you don't have you don't have a foot to stand on when you're like, all right, so you're gonna start regulating blocks of aluminum now, or you're gonna start regulating
Yeah.
the roll of filament. Like you cannot do that. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And
Not without massively affecting all kinds of other industries as well.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And it's awesome. It's really cool to see. People have kind of rallied around this idea of like, all right, fuck you, and I'm just gonna go ahead and keep doing it.
Self-perpetuating Cody Wilsons everywhere.
Yeah.
Minus the 15-year-old prostitutes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still contend that was a sting.
Oh, absolutely! It absolutely was. It was an absolute honeypot, dude. And because that guy is not that stupid. I mean, there's just no way. And ultimately had the last laugh, man. Getting paid in Bitcoin and selling aluminum machines, which you can literally go downtown in the Austin area and pick up any day of the week. And I don't know if anybody's seen any late interviews with that guy, but he is more chill now than he probably ever has been, just because he knows he won. Like it's over. He won.
Yeah, he's been galvanized basically by all the shit he's been pushed through by the courts and everything else, because he did win.
Yeah.
When his lawyer basically got up in front of the judge and was like, okay, so if my client were to print out the G code for his firearm and then go put it in the public library, would that be protected free speech? And the judge said, well, yes. And then he's like, okay, then there's no case here. The judge is like, yeah, you're right. like that's all the win he needed.
Yeah.
There's not much more to it. The guy was like, basically, if it's free speech when it's printed in a book, that means it's free speech when it's printed online. That's what it is. And it sounds so simple, but that was a landmark decision.
No, that guy was. Again, I've seen a couple of recent interviews for him, just sort of being in the same area as he is, and he just sort of laid back, much more laid back than he was, because he was he gives some fairly militant interviews, which were amazing back in the day. But he just sort of feels like he's on easy street now. Which kudos to him, man. He deserves it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like he was a kid. He was like going up against like all these like media corporations and everything else, and he was like a kid. He was younger than all of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. But no, I confess to being woefully ignorant to just 3D printing issues in general. I don't have one as of yet. It's on the to-do list, like so many other things. But no, I definitely keep track of the progress and the advancements being made. The question I had is, so the polycarbonate printing is that what they're using to make the polymer suppressor that's on the market right now?
The polymer suppressor that's on the market right now, and I forget who makes that, but I believe that's a proprietary material. I would assume it's based in some kind of polycarbonate because it has incredible resistance. But at the same time, it is also, there has to be some sort of blend because it actually just doesn't retain heat at all. It just funnels it out just by either design or the material itself. So whatever they're doing, they're on the right track, and it's going to lead somewhere. But at least at the moment, that's probably a one-off, and I see it becoming popular for sure. But I also think if I was that company right now, I would keep that information to myself for quite a while before anyone else figures it out. Because then you have the entire market to yourself, and you set the price, you set everything yourself.
Well, and the thing that shocked me most about what I had seen and researched from it is exactly what you're talking about with the heat dissipation properties of it. And I would never ever admit to watching a Brandon Herrera video, but allegedly he he did some tests with it with mag dumps through multiple calibers, and I mean it was impressive. It just was, and the price. I mean, just with the outrageous cost of silencers in the United States, which is a laughing stock worldwide compared to other countries who, especially Russia, where suppressors are required and are actually cheaper than the firearms as a result of it. But just being much more affordable to have the polymer suppressor, definitely something that has crossed my mind is trying to pick up.
You talking about that the polymer one that's like printed and it looks like a lemon?
No. This looks like just a regular suppressor, except it's yeah.
It is huge for a suppressor. I'll say that much.
It's big. It's not going to be like a small, sleek, nice silencer co one, but it's not a gimmick. It doesn't look gimmicky. It doesn't look out of place. But yeah, no, I mean $500 plus your tax stamp for one makes me wish they would move to Texas, where they where I wouldn't even have to pay for the tax stamp.
That's the cool thing, right? It's like there's a whole bunch of states. So Texas is just now adopted this law, but like Kansas and Missouri did this earlier, and they're currently in the courts fighting over this. And it's gonna be really, really interesting because
well, the more states hop on that, the better it's going to be.
Rights right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, the more states hop on to stuff like that, the better it's going to be for absolutely everybody to just give a big giant middle finger to the ATF.
Well, it's so funny because like politically, there's a lot of people on the left who are like, legalization of marijuana is a states' rights issue. The Fed has no right to interfere with that, and then they'll turn around and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you guys can't pass these,
anti-individual plastic and aluminum manufacturing laws." Like, how dare we?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I completely agree. I agree with them about the marijuana plant. It is a state. It is a states' rights issue, and yeah, the ATF just needs to completely fuck up the same way the IRS and the post office.
Anti-post office. That's not something I've heard very often.
Don't even fucking get me started, dude. Don't even fucking get me started about the goddamn post office. That's a whole other show unto itself.
Oh yeah, that is a next show topic. But I would want to hear about the post office and your grievances with the post office.
I seriously have never met anyone who has a genuine grievance with the post office.
I got a lot of grievances, man. It's that's probably just because I'm old, but and most of them are government related as well. But yeah, the post office is up there, man.
But I think for at least for this show, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for being here, of course. Unless anyone have any other topics they wanted to bring up on this show, we'll put on the postal service on next.
Go ahead.
I
did have one thing I just wanted to say quickly before we wrapped up, and that is fuck the ATF.
Oh yeah, fuck the ATF.
Yeah.
And not in a way that's pleasurable.
And FRT or other things.
Oh yeah.
It's good to see a company actually for once that will take the ATF head on, as opposed to just sort of slithering away and doing some new loophole a couple of years later. But for the time being, and I hope that sets the precedent of companies actually fighting back against the ATF. Anyways, that'll do it for this show. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you've already done so, we'll be doing this probably every other week. We'll be back next time, more topics. Maybe there'll be some developments when it comes to Remington's ongoing battles. 2 weeks from now, we will actually know the outcome of the final outcome of the Russian ammo sanctions. So we'll have more input on that. And also, Narc, your ongoing battle with the postal office. So, people of the revolution for the post office. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Later, boys.